Oh, hi, everybody. I'm Allison Williams, the Library Services Coordinator for the Copper Queen Library, and I am thrilled to have Emily Burns, the Program Director of Sky Island Alliance, here to talk about the FotoFauna kit and program. And we are just so excited to be a partner with Sky Island and this FotoFauna project. So I will announce right now that we have the camera kits available at the Copper Queen Library for checkout with your Bisbee patron card. And so you can just call the library and put one on hold if you're interested after this program. And we will have a Q&A at the end. You can also type your questions into the chat during the program if you like. So with that, Emily, take it away.
Great. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here. I'm trying to figure out where my share screen is. Let's see. How's that looking? Good. Okay. So I'm going to give you an overview of what FotoFauna is all about. And it's a really fascinating project that really only got started about a year ago. And in that time, we've had this amazing emergence of a wildlife monitoring community. Many people who already had cameras, other nonprofits, even parks that had cameras and are now we're pooling these data together to have a very comprehensive view of where we are finding different species across the Sky Island region. So today I'm going to talk you through how you get going with FotoFauna and then share some of the new results that have come out of the project during the first year. So I like to start with this fabulous photograph of a desert tortoise. And for those of you who are interested in conservation of wildlife species, one of the first things that we realize is that we can't protect these species if we don't know where they are. And so fundamentally, having as many places across the landscape really help us where we're detecting whether we see species or the absence of certain species can tell us so much about habitat quality, how connected different reserves are to one another, and can help us make really good decisions with the money that we have to put towards conservation in any neighborhood. So this is just what I always remind myself. We can't protect these species if we don't know where they are. And that's a problem that we're able to solve by working together as a community to generate these wildlife occurrence data sets. So here's just a snapshot of where we have wildlife cameras reporting into the project. In the first year of FotoFauna, we've had over 300 different camera locations reporting in, letting us know for at least 1 month which species on our checklist they've seen, and sharing a photo voucher that, in fact, yes, they did have hooded skunk and white-tailed deer and American badger. So this is really a network of cameras. It's a network of people that are contributing these wildlife data. And it's a really amazing partnership. And I just wanted to share with you all the groups that have come together to make this project possible over the last year. So Island FotoFauna, we have funding support to launch the project from the National Park Service, specifically the Southwest Border Resources Protection Program, and Saguaro National Park, and our Sky Island Alliance supporters. And just take a look at the amazing group of partners that are helping us on both sides of the US-Mexico border bring together these data sets. It's quite amazing, and we're super excited to have the Copper Queen Library as a partner. Okay, so getting started. I know that probably some of you are already very familiar with how wildlife cameras work, but really this is a project that anyone can start to participate in. And through the Lending Library program that Allison mentioned, if you don't have a wildlife camera and you want to borrow one, it's a great way to try for the first time. And we're really excited to be able to provide these cameras in communities to lower the barrier of access to this kind of wildlife monitoring equipment. So getting started really just begins with borrowing a camera or finding one that's right for you in your situation. I'm showing here 3 different cameras that I personally am familiar with and I use. In the Copper Queen Library, we have this version from Midace. It's a relatively inexpensive trail camera. It's really sensitive. It's going to even get triggered by butterflies that come in front of the camera. And it's motion activated. So motion and heat, those two, especially in combination, really do trigger. Midace can even be triggered by sound, which is interesting. So it's very sensitive. That's the only thing that I say as a warning about it. The Browning is another really fabulous company that makes wildlife cameras, and we use these extensively throughout the borderlands for research projects. This one is more expensive, but we've had really great luck with it in recent years. Both of the first two cameras that I mentioned use memory cards like you'd have in a digital camera that you have to manually take out and download photos onto your computer. They also need to be resupplied with batteries periodically. You can contrast that with another kind of camera that plugs in to the socket, a home security camera, and they actually do pretty well, not for the smallest species, but they do pretty well for medium and large mammals. I use a Google Nest camera, and it's definitely alerted me over my home Wi-Fi. So I get a notice on my phone if I have something really cool outside my house, and then I can run and look out the window. And I love that. And I love being interrupted in meetings to look down and see what might be drinking from my water hole. So that can be really fun if you want to have the immediate satisfaction of knowing when an animal has come by someplace, but you would need to be able to plug it in and have a Wi-Fi connection. To participate in FotoFauna, we ask that cameras get set in the same location for 1 month, and you report on a full calendar month. We do that to standardize how the data is being collected. We recognize that people are using many different camera models. They're going to be mounting their cameras on very different structures. But if we have a full month of data and we're just looking for presence or absence, was each species on our checklist there or not there for a period of the month? So we don't differentiate for the checklists that are submitted, whether there were 15 bobcats that were seen or just one. As long as you have one detection of a species per month, it's a yes on your checklist. So where can you put a camera? Well, you can put a camera almost anywhere. We often think, oh, we've got to point water, we've got to put a camera right on a water source. And in fact, that can be really interesting. You'll get a high volume of animals coming through to drink, especially during the hottest, driest season here in our region. But you can watch so many different things. And so I'm going to share with you places around my house that I've put cameras out. First of all, a burrow. A burrow can be so fascinating. Here's a burrow that I discovered last summer, and I put a camera out, and sure enough, there was a badger that had moved in. And a badger might be there, it could leave, then different squirrel species could come through. And what I find when I have a camera on a burrow is you see that the shifting and changing of species that are using this different burrow over time, which is really fun. I like to mount my cameras really low to the ground, so I have a good perspective of what's coming in and out of some place like a burrow. So any place where you think animals might be hiding, might be nesting, that kind of shelter is a really fun place to watch with a camera. Certainly a feeder can be really interesting. We get great birds that love to come. Of course, hummingbirds, I get orioles. I have Gila woodpeckers that come to my hummingbird feeder. But then what's really fun is to see the migratory bats as they come through. And I'm in Tucson, and in Tucson, we get lesser long-nosed bats. And so I've had this, you can see a camera here in this Palo Verde focused over at a feeder, and I've been counting the number of individuals that come each night and what time of day they arrive for their first feed and when they leave. And there's a backyard bat project that's looking at this across the region. And so really fun to keep an eye on a feeder like that. Any place where you see kind of an animal highway, or it could be an animal highway, it could be a game trail, it could be a wash. A lot of animals like to walk on the same kind of things that we like to walk on. So they like to take the easy road too. So washes are really interesting. You can see a lot of animals moving through. And I've had a camera in the wash down below my house, just on a wooden stand, that's been really great. And I've seen so many different species, lots of bobcats and coyotes going through. I even see the badger running through at night. So I really recommend some kind of crossing or pathway for a camera placement. And then, like I said in the beginning, water is really fun. Right outside of my family room window, I've got a Google nest. I now also have a browning mounted there too. And it's great to see small birds, the cottontails come through, the large carnivores also do. I get javelina coming and sitting in the water bowl, and then these bathing badgers that come and roll over on their back. And it's quite fascinating to see the behavior of animals just around a really simple water bowl. Well, once you have fun picking your camera placement, and it's an art and a science to try different things, try the different angles, figure out what's going to work well for your location, then you get to be reviewing your photos. And there are so many different wildlife questions that one can ask, reviewing a series of detections that might be captured over a month on a wildlife camera. But for this project, all you need to do is go through the checklist, and it's just yes or no for each species. So imagine it's sort of like a bingo board. You've got your bingo board and you're looking and you say, okay, you're going through your photos. As soon as you get Gamble's quail, check, save one of those photos, and you're going to submit that to the checklist. If you've done it for a full month, you might only have a handful of species. That's totally normal. Probably the first month you have a camera up, you might get really lucky and get something unusual. But most likely, the first month you have a camera out, you're going to see the species that are most common in your area. But the longer you leave your camera out, the more likely you are to detect the species that are less common. So imagine we're doing this bingo board, if you will, for 5 months, and you could get a cumulative total of 8 species that you've seen during that time. As long as you've seen that species once over that 5-month period, it would count. So you have 8 species, which is pretty exciting, but of course you want to see more species. You can do that by leaving your camera out longer. So in this example, if you were to leave it out for another 2 months, you would be growing your species list, and you could potentially be adding another few species. And that's really commonly what we see across all the cameras that we have in the region. The longer you leave it out, the more and more species that you will see. We had a camera down in the San Rafael Valley, closer to the Huachuca mountainside, where we finally got skunk bingo this year, which is really exciting. We've got 4 different skunks that live in the Sky Island region. And in June, this one camera detected all 4 species: striped, spotted, hooded, and hognose. And just to illustrate what I mean by patience really pays off to see different species, here's a graph where on the bottom, we're looking at cumulative number of months. So imagine this camera has been running for many, many, many months. And every time one of these skunk species is detected, the line goes up. So the blue line, well, the very first skunk species that was detected actually is this red line. That's a hooded skunk. So that was detected within the first few months. The second species to be detected was the blue line here, this hognose skunk. Okay, now let's 12 months in a year, we'd only seen 2 species and just a couple of detections each of both hognosed and hooded. It wasn't until 20 months of this camera running that finally spotted and striped showed up, not very common in this particular location. And then look at this. I mean, it was 43 months before all of the species showed up at the same time. So don't be dismayed if your camera doesn't show you, a jaguar in month 1. You might have to wait a really long time to get your spotted cat. So once you've placed your camera, you've gone through your photos, you've got a whole month checklist ready to submit, you can go to our website, skyislandalliance.org/photofauna, and you will find a blue button to submit your checklist. It's going to walk you through some basic information. Once you get good at submitting, it takes you about just 5 minutes to submit your checklist. We ask for your contact information. It's always kept confidential. It's just so that we can get back to you if we realize that there might be a species identification that needs to be corrected in your checklist, or if we have any questions about your camera setup. We also need to know exactly where your camera is. This is also kept totally confidential. You can find your camera location by using a GPS. You can take a photo with a smartphone and then look at the information, the location information embedded in that photograph. I'm happy to help people figure out how you determine what your exact location of your camera is. Sometimes if you're relying on the GPS of your phone, it's going to walk a little bit if you try to take it each time every month. So here's an example where we had multiple locations submitted over subsequent months. We just took the centroid. We see there's one real camera location here, and there's a separate run over here. If a camera locations are reported within 10 meters of one another, we end up just combining them. But if they're far enough apart, then they're treated as independent camera locations. And here's an illustration of how we maintain confidentiality of the camera locations. We don't want anyone to know where your camera is. We want to protect the wildlife, protect your privacy and the camera. So in this example, here are 4 actual camera locations around my house. And we randomize the locations for any maps that we show. So for all the maps I'm going to show you going the rest of the talk, know that the camera location is within 1 kilometer of the true location. So you might look at our maps online and say, oh my gosh, it looks like someone has a camera at my house and I don't have a camera. It just means it's been randomly assigned there. Okay, we also ask whether there's been a water source, drinkable water source for wildlife within about 50 feet of the camera. This is really interesting for us because humans always think water and a water source is going to have more species. And we want to test that with the data that's coming in. So far, that doesn't seem to be the case. We get the same number of species, maybe different combinations of species further away from water, but we're really curious to know which camera locations are close to drinkable water. Okay, so let's get to it. Let me share with you some of the findings that we've had in the first year. Here is an example of the kind of maps that you can view. We have an interactive map viewer on our website where you can fly around and zoom in, look at different neighborhoods, click on a camera and see what species lists have been seen on that location. The blue circles represent a camera that is close to water. Yellow means that there wasn't drinkable water at that camera location. And the larger the circle, the more species that have been detected there. Okay, well, out of 44 listed species on our checklist, the network over the last year has been able to detect 37 of them. And I'm going to walk through which are the species that we've seen and which species continue to be on our most wanted list. We're continuing to look for them as the checklists come in. And you can see there are a lot of species over here that haven't been seen very often. And then there are much more common species. And so I'm pretty fascinated by the species that are really common. They're so cosmopolitan and they're living in very rural areas, urban areas as well. And so I wanna show you those. So we're gonna start with the canines. Now they're interesting because the most commonly reported species over the whole network is coyote. That may not surprise any of you if you have coyotes going through your yard all the time like I do. But out of over 1,000 checklists that we've had in the first year that have been submitted, we've had almost 600 of them say, yes, there was a coyote present at least once during that month. Gray fox, another canine, has been also common, but less than half of the checklists that had coyotes had gray fox. So it's not as common. And on our most wanted list is the kit fox. We don't have any reports of kit fox yet. Then the second most common species is the javelina, and it's in this group of hooved mammals, basically. So javelina are incredibly common. Almost half of the checklist that came in did have javelina. Whitetail came in at number 5, so also pretty common across the region. And then the mule deer are not as commonly seen in our area, but certainly they are being reported. And this is a picture from the San Rafael Valley. Nice moody photo of grazing mule deer. The other hooved mammals on our list, we've had one report of, and it was actually a Sky Island Alliance camera of pronghorn. But so far we don't have any bighorn sheep or elk that have been reported to the network. We don't have cameras in every location that is great habitat for these species. So less common species or species that have a more specific habitat that may not be represented yet across the camera network explain why we haven't had detections of them yet. Switching to cats. So the third most commonly observed species was bobcat. A really amazing animal that's able to live very well in our urban environments, in suburban developments, and then out in our least developed, most natural habitats and protected open space. Mountain lions, there have been 90, so about 10% actually of the monthly checklists that have been reported have mountain lion, which I thought was heartening. The data that we had analyzed through the first year, we didn't have an ocelot, but some new checklists that are coming in do have ocelot reporting in Sonora, which is super exciting. And of course, jaguar certainly could be in the region, but we don't have any reports of them on the network. Okay, rabbits and hares. This one is really interesting to me as a group of animals. We have a lot of concern about the jackrabbits in particular because they are vulnerable to disease. And I've been hearing reports that feel very anecdotal at this point, but of loss of jackrabbits in different parts of our region. So these are the kind of questions that hopefully FotoFauna can help wildlife managers in the future better understand. Where do we have viable populations of species like jackrabbits? So far in the network, we have both blacktail and antelope in different parts of the region. You can go onto our data explorer and you can select a species and see where it's actually being shown, where it's showing up and where we're finding it. Certainly the most common is actually the rabbit, the cottontail. And what we've spoken to a bunch of experts, and it's not possible to differentiate between desert and eastern cottontails with the wildlife camera photos that we're getting. So we can make an educated decision once the data's in based on the elevation where the animal was detected. But for the purposes of this project, because they're so hard to tell apart, both eastern and desert are being combined into the same genus category. Birds. Well, everyone says that wildlife cameras are for mammals, and I hear that, and that's true, but birds move fast and they also are warm-blooded and they are really photographed often on wildlife cameras. So we have included them. We have a short list number of birds that we actually list by species in the checklist, but you're welcome to submit any bird observations that you have, and there's a space to add additional photographs and species observations. Gambel's quail is very common. It came in number 6 of most common species seen. Roadrunners, I love this photo of a roadrunner flying towards the camera. Cooper's hawks and turkey vultures have also been seen. The Gould's turkey has been popping up. It's a really beautiful animal. Then greyhawk, often in the riparian areas, so cameras that are around flowing water and rivers with nice canopy gallery, we can get greyhawks. Elf owl. Elf owl's been interesting. I thought I had elf owl on camera based on really tiny owls that I was getting around my house, but we don't have any confirmed photos of elf owls through the project. And so I have it on the most wanted list. I want to share this one. So this picture was from a wildlife camera near a burrow around my house. And after I got this photo, didn't see any ear tufts. I said, oh no, that's definitely an elf owl. I was out here like a crazy person on my stomach, trying to measure the height from the ground, trying to figure out which branch, was the best height reference for this animal. And I measured it. I thought it was 4 inches. It seemed really small, but finally passed this photo past enough experts. And I want to share this in case you get any small owl photos and you're curious whether it could be an elf owl. If you look around the eyes, there's a small vertical bar for this. It's the telltale sign of a Western screech owl, and the elf owls don't have that. So there's no tufts. Western screech, we often think of them with those ear tufts, but at night, all the photos that I have and videos I have of them, they're down during the night. So something to look out for, just that vertical black bar above the eye, and that's a Western screech. We also get so many beautiful photographs of birds that we don't have listed by name on the checklist, but we love seeing the birds flying and just being their beautiful selves in front of the camera. And here's just a small collection of the different birds that have been submitted to FotoFauna. Moving on to the raccoon family. We have raccoons in many different places and different habitats around our region. So about 11% of the checklists that we've received have raccoons so far. Ringtail have been seen quite a bit. And we have ringtail now, we know, in Midtown Tucson because of FotoFauna. So really, even coming into that pretty urbanized environment, we think the particular ringtail that's been photographed by FotoFauna cameras in Tucson and Winter Haven has been enjoying palm tree, like dates, different fruits from the trees in their neighborhood, which is kind of fun. And then white-nosed coati. We've been getting quite a few of those too. Rodents. When we started the project, we didn't have as many rodents on the checklist, and Saguaro National Park convinced us to add all the squirrels in, because really these are the kind of species that we often don't have enough data on, and they definitely trigger these wildlife cameras. So we're beginning now, all this year, we've been cataloging where we're finding the different species of squirrels. So rock squirrel here on the left, there's been 84 out of about 1,000 checklists have had it. It's often confused with the Arizona gray squirrel. The difference with rock squirrel, what to look out for, is they're very speckled. Their fur on their back is really speckled and different because of that in comparison to a gray squirrel. The Harris's antelope squirrel is really characteristic with this white line along the side. And then the round-tailed squirrel is pretty unique. It's a very blonde, light-colored squirrel. We also get a lot of reports of other rodents, including rats and mice. Those can be much harder to differentiate just with a photograph alone, but you're welcome to submit pictures of other rodents that you're seeing. So here, just switching over to the other squirrels, Arizona gray squirrel. We just got our very first cliff chipmunk observations at slightly higher elevation. The Reddington Pass and Chiricahua National Monument have reported chipmunk. We don't yet have any Abbott squirrel, so they're on the most wanted list. We need to get some high elevation cameras reporting into FotoFauna to see the Abbott squirrel. Well, North American porcupine is just one of my favorites, and we do have some cameras. I just checked a camera yesterday on the Santa Cruz River that had a porcupine on it. So we will start seeing, I think, more of them popping up, but keep a lookout. They're in grassland, they're in oak woodland forests, definitely down by the border. So they might be in your neighborhood, and if they are, we really want to know. Beavers, they're certainly on the San Pedro. We don't have any photographic evidence of them yet on the project. Okay, skunks, we already talked about that. You know, try to go for skunk bingo. The most common in our area is the hooded skunk. This is one of the groups of animals that we most often, when we're reviewing the FotoFauna checklist, have to clarify the species identification. We found 8 different morphological variations, so different stripe patterns for hooded skunk alone. So they can look very striped skunk-like. And I've seen some online arguments break out about hognose skunk versus some of the hooded skunks that have very white backs. Generally, the hognose skunk has a much shorter tail. And so that's one of the clear signs, plus the nose is different on the hognose skunk. Striped skunks will always have a black triangle at the base of the tail, unlike the hooded skunks. And then the western spotted, that's the easiest one to tell because it has such a distinctive coat pattern. Okay, other species, well, black bear, we have about 40 different checklists that have reported black bear in the region. Badger, they're not all from my house, a lot of them are, but we do have other people reporting badger in, which is good. And then we're on the look out for the long-tailed weasel. Any bat pictures are of interest if you have them. So you're welcome to submit those. Difficult to tell species unless you get a really clear shot of the distinguishing features between the species. So generally it's just a bulk category for any bat detections on camera. We've been fascinated by the North Mexican subspecies of the Virginia opossum. And so down in Sonora and then up north of the border, we are getting this subspecies of Virginia opossum. It's characteristic in our region by having a dark base to its tail, and it's lighter at the end of the tail. So that's always what I look for in differentiating this subspecies. We do have reports of it. We're trying to understand what is the northern distribution of the subspecies of Virginia opossum. The northernmost one that I'm aware of recently is around Mammoth, Arizona, but I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love to know if it's actually pushing further north than that. We are counting detections of Gila monsters and any other reptile that has been seen on camera. You're welcome to report that. Okay, so I wanted to just zoom in a little bit and talk about what's happening closer to the Copper Queen Library. We don't have cameras yet that have reported in, though I think that's about to change with the Lending Library program in or around Bisbee immediately. The online data viewer that we have for the first year of the project has the data in mostly to the west of the Mule Mountains. Though I just looked online and it looks like in the last couple of weeks, we just had a few cameras reporting in south of Bisbee, which is exciting. And we'll be updating our data viewer in January with the new data that's come in. So here's just to give you an idea of in the region where we have cameras reporting in. We've got a lot in the southern Huachuca Mountains, along the border, up through the Patagonia Mountains, and then along the San Pedro River, we've got observations coming in. So if we look at the species list that I just went through, but tailored to that snapshot of the geography that I just showed you in that window. So the Patagonia Mountains over eastward through the mules, here's the species that we've been detecting through the project. The most common is white-tailed deer, followed by gray fox, then coyote, javelina, and coati. So different from the whole project where we have many more urban areas reporting in. And I love seeing that the gray foxes are more common and the coati, slightly higher elevation area, reporting in around the greater Bisbee area. This is another figure that you can play around with. If you're on our map viewer, you can click on a different neighborhood and see how many species, which species are popping up. So you're welcome to explore that way and get a sense of how your area might be comparing to different locales or neighborhoods across the region. Okay, so just a reminder about how to get to the website. We have so many different resources for you there. We've got frequently asked questions about the project. We've got really detailed species guides about how to tell mule deer from white-tailed deer and the 4 different skunk species. We hope you go and explore it and check it out. We've got a lot of webinars that have been recorded about different topics and tutorials on how to do the project. We also have a link to a store where you can sport some fun shirts or hats or drink your coffee out of a FotoFauna mug. All the proceeds from this go towards building the FotoFauna project and specifically the Lending Library program. We have 24 cameras on loan to students in Sonora. And so 10% of the data that's come into FotoFauna so far has been from Sonora cameras, and the sale of this gear, good for Christmas presents. It helps us put more cameras in the hands of students that may be the next generation of wildlife conservation scientists. So if that's of interest to you, check that out. And happy wildlife watching. Have fun playing bingo. I hope you get the combination of species that you most want to see on your cameras. We love to share the best photos that come in. If you give us permission, we'll always give you credit. We'll never link your photos to the specific location where your camera is. So we do protect privacy. But we will be doing on Thursday our end of year photo contest. with Sonoran National Park. So Ranger Freddie and I will be holding a live voting event for a bunch of different categories. So that'll be fun. If you're interested in checking that out, join us. It'll be a fun hour looking at some of the best photos that have come in this year. If you want to contact me personally, you can reach me. There's my email address. And I share my own wildlife photos and videos on Instagram at Tucson Emily. With that, I'm going to stop and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So please feel free to unmute yourself. And thank you so much, Emily. What a comprehensive view. And it's fascinating to see those animals and creatures caught in their own life, you know, in their own habitat. And I think Bisbee is really remarkable. I live in a neighborhood within the city on a paved street, and I routinely have javelina, deer, skunk, owls, many kinds of birds, and then some creatures. I'm not sure what they are. I just had, I think that paved street must be just part of an old javelina trail. They're just always, every night. And I saw a family / group of, I think I counted 19, 3 adults and 16 babies. That was
Oh,
a
how
pretty
lovely.
big pack for my neighborhood.
Yeah, I'll say.
I just read that a group of javelina is called a squadron.
Mhm.
A squadron of javelina. That was
Yeah,
who came down my street.
there you go. I thought that's a pretty cool way to describe them.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So I was wondering how long the project is going on for, or indefinitely, or do you have a time frame?
I mean, I hope that's going to be around for a really long time. We're building this resource to be a community resource to access wildlife data. Our hope is that with communities coming together and sharing these data, we can provide a portal for people who are trying to plan conservation projects to understand which species are in their area. When communities are thinking about whether they want a new highway or a new road coming into their community, they can think about the presence of species and hopefully make more informed decisions. So we're working with the National Park Service and other groups to make this be a robust planning framework that would be available. So no end in sight. We just see opportunities to grow it. We see a lot of potential partnering with schools and universities for students to get to learn in a really simple way about wildlife monitoring. So our goal is to just have it grow. It can be much larger than the Sky Island region. We hope that many other places might be inspired by what we're doing here and want to contribute data as well. So many of the species we care about in our region live beyond our immediate area. And so it'd be interesting to see where they're doing well and in other places further south in Mexico and in other states around Arizona as well.
And for the Copper Queen Library checkout program, that you will get the camera for 1 month. So we'll rotate them around, and it's quite possible that the little stars on your maps was from patrons, because we have patrons who live, you know, outside of the city limits. Anybody in Cochise County can have a library card to any library in Cochise County. And in fact, we, if you have Bisbee as your home, you can use your library card at every library in the county. So, but this program is for Bisbee patrons. If you don't have a library card, it's very easy. You just bring in a photo ID and a piece of mail, and we'll get you set up. And then you upload any photos that you want at the website. And the kit also comes with a very comprehensive guide of instructions as well, in hard copy inside the box.
That's great. And our next project, our next lending library will be in Patagonia. in the Patagonia Library.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
So should we check our cameras, our cards every day, or how often should we look at what we've got? Of course, we'll want to see every day, probably.
I know. Well, I do recommend when you first put a camera out to probably check it the next day. You might be surprised and realize, oh, shoot, I have it pointing too low. It's pointing right at the ground and I'm only getting the toes of animals, or it's good to adjust it. I would say in the first few days, first week, probably checking it every couple of days is helpful. And then it's just personal preference, how often you want to go. When we have cameras in more wild spaces, we're certainly not going every month. So if you were to let the camera run for 3 months, that's totally fine. You can process your data. We would just ask you to still report in month intervals. So if you check more frequently, you would be combining those camera checks to give us one checklist for a month. If you are checking it every few months, you would still divide your data up then by month. So people that start to get into the swing of reporting a monthly checklist might just check it on the, the first week of the month and then report on the month previously. But certainly my own home cameras, I'm checking them every week to see what's there.
And you can just pull up the screen and click back through the photos it's recorded without uploading your data at that moment, right? So you can hang it, check the next day, check in a couple days, make sure it's in the right spot, and then you can just go look at the screen, and then at the end of the month, take it down, go through everything and report. You don't have to report every day, but you can certainly go view it every day if you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And there's lots of different ways to organize photos, and it's certainly, there's no perfect system. Everybody finds what works for them. But what I tend to do is save the best photos I have as I go through them. And then when I go to do my checklist, I just take one of each. And then if I've got several, I can't choose which bobcat photo, for example, I want to submit. There's a place to add in extra photos if you want to share more than one.
Excuse me, Emily.
Yes.
On your site here, the Sky Island Allowance, do you have a file anywhere with camera specs? I'm working on building some of my own using like the Raspberry Pi camera and things like this.
I don't think at this time we have something that describes camera specs. If you want to send me an email, I'm happy to share with you more information about how we have our specific cameras set up. We have cameras in so many different environments. We do vary the settings quite a bit based on the habitat we're in. When I'm working in the San Rafael Valley and the grass is taller than me, we end up increasing the amount of time before we let the camera take the next photo, because we have to conserve battery life and memory card space for the camera. But in other places where we don't get a lot of false triggers or just vegetation triggering the camera, then we might shrink that capture delay, for example. So I'm happy to follow up with you and share more about the different ranges of settings we use and things like that.
Well, it'll be taking a while. I'm still working on my own eyes at the moment.
Understood.
That's why I don't have my my camera on, because I can only get about 8 inches from the screen to see anything yet.
Got it. Yes. Okay. Well, that's
soon.
Yeah, you take care.
Okay. Thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye, Steve. So does anybody else have any questions, or what's the, Susie?
I do have one more. It's a tech kind of question, because I have a laptop that doesn't have a thing to, insert the
reader?
memory card. So I have to do it through the USB, right? There's like this little adapter thing. I think I have one from my camera.
I think we put card readers in the kit, right, Emily?
Yeah, there are card readers, and we actually I've got a whole box of them at the Sky Island Alliance office. So if you need an adapter for a memory card, if you send me an email, I can send one to you.
Okay,
there's a-
I'll check out the kit and see if I need one. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And some of our public computers have card readers, but I believe a card reader is included in the kit to make it easy because so many computers don't have that
Right.
option anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And Allison, if you end up needing more of those, we do. We bought 200 cameras for a research project, and in each one came with a reader. So we've got a lot.
That's
If you need
fantastic.
extras.
Fantastic. Any other questions or comments? Well, I just want to say that I'm really excited that you came to watch this and learn more about how Sky Island is not just, observing our environment, but by documenting our environment, creating change in the way that we as human communities interact with our environment and our wild animals. I think it's a really important thing. The more that we learn and know, the better we can protect and safeguard. And that's always been apparent living here on the border, that while humans might view a wall, animals care no such thing. They open my front gate routinely. They don't care that it's a front yard. It's part of their pathway and their trail. And so they make their own way. And they live here along with us, but we so rarely get to see them. And this is such an exciting way to both be citizen scientists and to learn more about where we live.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you have fun wildlife watching. Feel free to let me know if you have questions that come up using cameras or with wildlife or ideas for the project. We'd love to think of other partners we can bring in and how to spread the word. So anyway, nice to see you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Emily. Thank you so
Enjoy
much
your
for joining
evening.
us. Have a good night, everybody.
Good
Thank
night.
you.